Emotional independence is the core of masculine strength, yet it's also the quality most men forget when they enter a relationship. When a man begins to rely on a woman for his emotional stability, his sense of power begins to fade. He becomes reactive to her moods, dependent on her attention, and anxious when that attention fades. This is where most relationships fall apart, not because the woman changes, but because the man stops leading himself. A stoic man understands that emotions are meant to be observed, not obeyed. He knows that peace doesn't come from being loved by another person, it comes from mastering his inner world. When you are emotionally independent, you no longer fear loss, rejection, or silence. You understand that solitude isn't a punishment, it's a reminder that your strength has always come from within. Most men chase validation from women because they haven't built it for themselves. They look for her to tell them they're enough, handsome, worthy, successful. But when that approval fades, their self worth collapses with it. This is why Stoicism teaches detachment, not in the sense of being cold or uncaring, but as a means to protect your emotional foundation. You are supposed to feel love, but you are not supposed to be ruled by it. When you control your emotions, you create space for clarity. You stop reacting out of fear or insecurity and start acting out of intention. You become the calm in the storm, the man who doesn't chase after someone's affection because he understands that his peace is priceless. Women are naturally drawn to this kind of energy because it's rare. Most men become emotional puppets pulled by strings of approval, while a stoic man holds his ground with quiet confidence. He gives love freely, but never at the cost of his dignity. Emotional independence also means taking full responsibility for your feelings. No woman, no relationship, and no rejection has the power to define who you are unless you give it that power. You are not her savior, and she is not your source of happiness. You are responsible for your inner balance, your direction, and your growth. When you embrace this truth, you stop clinging to people and start choosing them from a place of strength. You stop needing and start appreciating. That shift changes everything, not just how women see you, but how you see yourself. This is why emotional independence is power. It's the ability to remain grounded when life shakes you, to love without losing yourself, and to walk away when peace costs too much. It's the quiet confidence that says, I don't need your validation to know my worth. Once a man reaches this level of awareness, no relationship can break him and no rejection can define him. He becomes unshakable, self led, and free, and that freedom is what makes him truly magnetic. The man who learns to master his emotions becomes the man no one can control. When a man learns the value of solitude, he unlocks one of life's greatest powers, self mastery. Most people fear being alone because they associate it with loneliness or rejection. But solitude, when embraced correctly, becomes a forge, strengthens your mind, your purpose, and your peace. It's in silence that you discover who you truly are without the influence or validation of anyone else. In relationships, many men lose themselves trying to please a woman, adjusting their personality habits and priorities just to keep her interested. Yet when she leaves, they realize how much of themselves they abandoned in the process. Solitude gives you the time and space to rebuild that man, the man who doesn't need company to feel complete. When you spend time alone, you begin to listen to your own thoughts without interference. You start to see your weaknesses clearly and work on them with honesty. This process is uncomfortable, but it's also essential. A man who fears being alone will always be controlled by that fear. He will tolerate disrespect, emotional games, and manipulation just to avoid the quiet of solitude. But a man who finds peace in his own presence is unbreakable. He doesn't chase attention, he attracts respect. He doesn't beg for validation, he moves with self assurance. Women can sense that energy. It's calm, grounded, and rare. The Stoic path teaches that solitude isn't the absence of love, but the presence of self awareness. It's not about avoiding connection, but about learning not to depend on it for your sense of worth. When you become comfortable alone, you begin to see relationships differently. You no longer choose partners out of need, you choose them out of genuine desire and alignment. This makes your presence in any relationship more powerful because it's rooted in strength, not fear. You bring value instead of searching for it. You share peace instead of chaos. During solitude, you also gain clarity about your purpose. You stop seeking distractions and start focusing on what truly matters, whether it's building your career, mastering a skill, improving your health, or deepening your spiritual understanding. Time alone gives you the opportunity to grow in silence. It's in those quiet moments that great men are made. The ones who learn to channel their energy inward instead of scattering it across meaningless pursuits. Solitude becomes a sanctuary where your mind resets, your emotions stabilize, and your vision becomes clear. When a man embraces solitude, he stops fearing loss. He realizes that peace is never found in another person, it's cultivated within. And once you've tasted that kind of inner calm, you stop accepting anything that disturbs it. This is why the man who's at ease with solitude becomes so powerful. He can walk away when needed, He can stay silent when provoked, and he can remain composed when others lose control. Solitude doesn't weaken a man, it refines him into someone unshakable, self led, and fully aware of his worth. And that kind of man doesn't chase love, love naturally finds him. Emotional control is one of the most underrated strengths a man can possess. In a world where reactions are instant and emotions run wild, a man who can stay calm, composed, and centered stands out as rare and powerful. Most relationships fall apart not because of external problems, but because one or both people lose control of their emotions. When a man reacts impulsively through anger, jealousy, or insecurity, he reveals weakness. He becomes predictable, easy to manipulate, and emotionally dependent on another person's behavior. But when a man practices emotional discipline, he becomes like still water, steady, clear, and deep. Nothing external can easily disturb his peace. A woman can test you, challenge you, even provoke you consciously or not to see if you'll break your composure. This isn't always malicious, sometimes it's instinctive. Women are naturally drawn to emotional strength because it symbolizes safety, leadership, and maturity. When a man remains calm under pressure, she senses that she can trust him to guide, protect, and remain stable no matter what happens. But when a man loses control over small things, arguing excessively, overreacting, or begging for attention, he loses that silent dominance. A woman may pity him for a moment, but she will lose attraction over time because he becomes emotionally unpredictable, and unpredictability equals instability. The Stoics taught that we can't control what happens to us, only how we respond. This is the essence of masculine power. The man who learns to manage his emotions doesn't suppress them, he masters them. He doesn't bottle up anger, he understands its root. He doesn't act out of fear. He analyzes it and moves with reason. He doesn't let love blind him. He lets it guide him without losing himself. Emotional control doesn't mean coldness. It means balance. It means feeling deeply but expressing wisely. It means loving with clarity, not desperation. In relationships, emotional control becomes your shield. When you don't react to drama, manipulation loses power. When you don't chase validation, others respect your independence. When you stay calm during chaos, you become the anchor everyone subconsciously depends on. And when a woman realizes she can't shake your peace, she becomes intrigued and eventually deeply drawn to you. Because that emotional stability communicates something very few men can: strength. It's the difference between a man who's controlled by his emotions and a man who commands them. The truth is, emotional control is not natural. It's developed, it comes from discipline, experience, and reflection. It's built by walking away when your ego wants to argue, by staying silent when your pride wants to shout, and by thinking before reacting. It's a slow transformation, but once mastered, it changes everything: your relationships, your mindset, your entire presence. The calm man becomes magnetic, respected, and quietly dominant because his peace cannot be purchased or provoked. And that's why, in the end, the man who controls his emotions controls his world. One of the most important realizations a man must come to is that a relationship should never be the center of his universe. The moment you make a woman your entire purpose, you lose the essence of who you are. Your focus shifts from building yourself to chasing validation, and slowly you forget that your mission, not your relationship, defines your worth. The Stoics often reminded us that attachment leads to suffering, and when your happiness depends on someone else's presence or approval, you're already on unstable ground. A man without purpose drifts, and when he drifts, he becomes emotionally needy, reactive, and weak. But when a man is grounded in his vision, driven by his goals, and guided by inner direction, he becomes someone who naturally commands respect, not someone who has to beg for it. Women are not attracted to men who revolve around them. They are drawn to men who are moving somewhere, who have ambition, focus, and the courage to pursue their path. And when you make your mission your priority, you give off an energy that speaks of independence and strength. You stop waiting for text, stop needing reassurance, and stop fearing loss, because your life doesn't collapse when someone walks away. It continues forward with purpose. And paradoxically, this is exactly what reignites a woman's respect and attraction. She begins to feel that she's with a man who doesn't need her to survive, but chooses her from strength, not weakness. Living with purpose changes everything about how you carry yourself. Your words have weight because they come from direction. Your time becomes valuable because it's spent on meaningful work. Your energy becomes focused instead of scattered. And when a man operates like this, he becomes calm, stable, and magnetic, qualities that make people naturally gravitate toward him. The Stoic mindset reinforces this truth. External things, whether love, wealth, or praise, can enhance your life, but they should never define it. Your purpose must come from within, from your own discipline and vision. When a man has no purpose, he seeks meaning through others. He becomes easily distracted, emotionally reactive, and dependent on how someone else feels about him. But when he finds his direction, the external world loses control over his emotions. He becomes the kind of man who doesn't chase, he attracts. He doesn't fear being alone because solitude becomes his strength, the place where he sharpens his mind and strengthens his resolve. A man on his mission doesn't just live, he leads. So when you focus on your purpose, everything else falls into place. Love, respect, peace all flow naturally toward the man who knows where he's going. The relationship becomes a part of his journey, not his destination. And that's the key. When you stop making her your world, she starts wanting to be part of yours. One of the most dangerous mistakes men make in relationships is ignoring red flags because they're blinded by attraction or the fear of being alone. When you overlook patterns of manipulation, emotional instability, or disrespect, you aren't showing love, you're showing weakness. A stoic man understands that emotions are powerful, but they must never overpower his judgment. The moment you allow feelings to cloud your discernment, you hand over control of your peace to someone who may not deserve it. Relationships require awareness, not illusion. If a woman constantly tests your boundaries, disrespects your time, or plays games to provoke reactions, she's revealing exactly who she is. And your job isn't to fix her, it's to protect your energy and walk away. Many men confuse tolerance with strength. They think that by enduring chaos or disrespect, they're proving loyalty or depth of love. But in reality, endurance without boundaries is self betrayal. A stoic man values peace over drama, stability over temporary pleasure. He knows that emotional chaos destroys focus and weakens discipline. The ability to stay calm doesn't mean you accept toxicity, it means you choose not to engage with it. There's a difference between patience and passivity. Patience is wise, it observes, evaluates, and acts when necessary. Passivity is fear disguised as peace. It avoids confrontation because it fears loss. A man who understands this knows when to be silent, when to act, and when to leave. Recognizing red flags early is a reflection of self respect. The more you grow in awareness, the less you tolerate anything that disturbs your inner world. You stop trying to change others and focus instead on controlling what you can, your reaction, your peace, and your standards. When you ignore warning signs, you set yourself up for emotional collapse. But when you walk away from instability, you preserve your strength. Stoicism teaches us to judge people by their actions, not their words. If someone repeatedly shows you inconsistency or manipulation, you don't need to wait for another lesson. You already have the truth. It's your decision whether you'll honor it or ignore it. Every time you choose to overlook a red flag, you're telling yourself that your peace doesn't matter. But a strong man refuses to live like that. He understands that being alone with dignity is far better than being with someone who drains his energy. Relationships should elevate you, not exhaust you. When you detach from toxic cycles, you make space for clarity, focus, and purpose. You realize that walking away isn't weakness, it's self mastery. In the end, a woman may admire a man's strength, but she truly respects the one who refuses to compromise his values. The ability to walk away from what disrupts your peace is the mark of true power. Because once a man masters the art of letting go, he becomes untouchable. A stoic man understands that true happiness doesn't come from being in a relationship, it comes from mastering yourself. When your peace, confidence, and sense of worth depend on another person, you give away the key to your emotional stability. Many men chase relationships thinking they'll fill an internal void, but what they really do is escape the discomfort of solitude. Stoicism teaches the opposite. It reminds you that solitude isn't a punishment, it's a powerful space for growth. When you are content in your own company, when you no longer crave validation, that's when you become truly free. A man who's grounded in himself doesn't need constant attention, affection, or reassurance. He doesn't seek someone to complete him. He already feels whole. This self contentment becomes magnetic. Ironically, when you stop chasing love, that's when love begins to chase you. Women are drawn to men who have direction, purpose, and emotional control. They feel the difference between a man who's desperate for attention and a man who's calm, self sufficient, and disciplined. The latter radiates strength, not because he's cold or distant, but because his peace isn't negotiable. He isn't trying to impress anyone, he's simply living by his own values. This quiet power creates curiosity, respect, and attraction. When a woman realizes she can't shake your focus or disturb your peace, she starts to see you differently. She understands that you're not like the rest. You're in control of yourself, and that's what separates a stoic man from the crowd. But reaching that state requires honesty and discipline. You have to face the uncomfortable truths about yourself, your insecurities, your emotional dependencies, your past mistakes. Instead of blaming others for your pain, you take full responsibility for your emotions. You stop waiting for someone else to make you happy and realize that happiness is a result of inner balance, not outer circumstances. The Stoic path is about progress, not perfection. It's about developing emotional resilience, mental clarity, and spiritual calmness. When you master that, relationships stop being a source of drama. They become a reflection of your stability. A stoic man isn't against love. He just refuses to let love control him. He understands that attachment often leads to suffering while detachment brings peace. That doesn't mean he's emotionless. It means his emotions serve him, not the other way around. He can love deeply and still walk away when his peace is threatened. That's the essence of power. To remain gentle yet unshakable, caring yet controlled, involved yet free. In the end, the ultimate lesson is simple: never look for happiness in another person. Become the source of your own peace, and everything else will align naturally. Because when you master yourself, you no longer chase love, you attract it without effort. That's the quiet strength of a stoic man, and it's what makes him unforgettable.